What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my friend and yours, Shams Benamor. Shams, how are you doing this fine Tuesday evening?
Oh, just happy that I'm not having to double check Twitter to make sure I'm not getting faked out by random trade reports that actually became true. So, sometimes, those Twitter skills come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think nobody is questioning your Twitter skills, to be sure. You're bringing us all the greatest content all the time. So we certainly appreciate that. I won't lie, I'm a little tired. Was up a bit late last night. My 10-year-old was ungovernable after the college football national championship game, but we had a blast. It was really cool. He's just about the same age I was in '97 when they had their last one. So, but I saw Brian do the patron cast on very little sleep. I can certainly do 25 to 30 minutes of fantasy hockey with you here on very little sleep as well. So really looking forward to getting started. Let's go ahead and get to it. The big news of the day, our first big headline, Jamie Drysdale traded for Cutter Gauthier. Obviously going to have some potential ripple effects here. I think the Cutter piece is, maybe not the most important thing at the moment. As Coach John Tortorella said, he doesn't know Cutter Gauthier from a hole in the wall, which I thought was very. What do I want to say? It was very in character for Torts, I think, to be that dismissive. But an interesting saga. Everybody seems to have an opinion on the drama. This is kind of what you were hinting at previously. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions. What do you think will be the impact for Drysdale leaving Anaheim and headed to Philly? Is it going to have a ripple effect for the other defensemen there? Your Egor Zamulas, your Cam Yorks? And what about Pavel Mintyukov and Cam Fowler over in Anaheim? How do you see all this shaking out? And again, we should, put the asterisk by this. This is obviously all going to be speculation until we see, a few games of lines. But what are your initial thoughts on the deal?
So the first thing is that we actually have a little bit of information from Torts, is that he did say that he expects to have Drysdale on the power play. He used the word "the," so we don't know if it's going to be the first or second. And then also a nice thing is he said is that they use a different defensive structure. I won't go into the detail. I think it was they play man in Anaheim and like zone in Philly, so he expects there's going to be some growth there, which I believe the phrasing was like, will take some time. So I feel like in this situation, he might be a little bit more forgiving of certain things. So I won't be as much of the old, hey, he screws up one play, he gets benched worried. So that's just going to be the kind of thing. It's just with any kind of NHL player, I'm amazed when they just like get traded and then go to the next team like the next day. It's not like, the NFL or a different league where you have to take like just so much work. So there'll be a little bit of growth there. He's going to get some playing time. That's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. He was pumping up Zamula's kind of work on the power play. So I'm not sure if this is just going to be a rotate in and out. So it'll be a wait and see. But I feel like Drysdale's going to be given some rope. He has the pedigree. They want to maybe pump him up a little bit to show they got something for that Gauthier trade. And then on the other side is that I see that I believe Mintyukov is on the first power play tonight, but I'm not 100% sold on Mintyukov because I had him in fantasy for a little bit at the start of the year when Drysdale was hurt. So it's kind of analogous to where we are right now. And while he had his moments, I ended up dropping him even before Drysdale came back. There was a little bit of time on the power play where it wasn't really producing, and then there's times where Cam Fowler took his place. So while it does help him, I'm not sure it's going to be one of those like pause to pod moments. And then as well on top of that, we don't know how serious it is that Drysdale, Zegras is actually out for the remainder of the game with a lower body injury. So we don't know the length of that. Leo Carlson's out. They somehow have 3 goals on Saros already. I might believe it might go up even more by the time I finish the sentence. But now
we'll touch on Saros a little later.
Yeah, is that it's going to be a little bit hard to have offense there. So with a defensive player, I'm not 100% sold on even the power play time pumping him up too much.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially when we have so many kind of younger players who are being involved in these trades. It can be a little more challenging to kind of sort out where we think things will fall ultimately. But I think that's wise. I think, we want to maybe caution a little bit against overreaction here. I think maybe more so than some of the other trades we have seen, it's going to take a little bit to shake out. I think it's safe to say that it is likely a boost for Mintyukov. That's at least where I'm falling on this, because it's one less obstacle between him and the power play, even if, as you mentioned, that power play might be weakened a little bit by injury over the next however long. Obviously we don't know the extent of what's going on with that Zegras possible injury here. I think it is a little more complicated in Philly, and that it certainly offers an interesting opportunity. But it seems like maybe a side grade for Drysdale. And then there's the added concern about, is this going to be a spot that he can sort of hold on to? So an interesting move for sure. This will be one, I think, where we'll look back on it in a few years and sort of see what kind of players Gauthier and Drysdale kind of turn into, and we'll have a better sense of how things went. I do think there's a bit of a risk on Anaheim's side, just because this is a guy who was a bit malcontent, but there were, depending on which story you hear and what story you believe, there may have been some very good reasons for his unhappiness. So we'll take it all with a grain of salt as we move forward. And like you said, we at least don't want to get trapped by some of those, the wild rumors that have been sort of going on in the meantime. But let's move on from this one. Certainly an interesting one. I have another question for you. I need some help. So we've sort of started to see a back and forth developing, almost Boston-esque in Pittsburgh, where Alex Nedeljkovic and Tristan Jarry have been going back and forth with starts and sort of intermittently having good games and bad games. It's really been all over the map. I haven't done the numbers on this, but my hunch is that Tristan Jarry may have the highest percentage of games among goalies that are either a really bad start or a quality start. The one thing that makes me wonder about that is Connor Hellebuyck might just be crushing it with, consistent quality starts, and that might throw things off. But in terms of kind of the balance between the quality starts and the really bad starts, I think Jarry's got to be up there. So it almost seems as if Ned is essentially as valuable as Jarry at this point. So here's my question for you. Does that mean they are both worth owning, or does that mean neither is worth owning? I know kind of our stance on the pod for a long time, and on the Megapod too, is that goalies that are splitting starts are generally not worth holding on to. So that's why I think it's interesting to pose the question. Maybe they both have value, or maybe because they're sharing value, they don't actually have any at all.
Yeah, this is going to be that like crystal ball situation. Is that I feel like, and really the kind of the dance is that while they're not perfect, I feel like we could say Pittsburgh is a good team. This is not like the dance where you see maybe where you have at a Columbus or a San Jose where the goalies are flipping and you're just hoping that they don't get shelled too much. That like you could get some wins, you could get some value. Is that using cacophonous scoring, which is a points league, which has, takes the value of the shots and minus for goals against, is that they're seeing enough from the wins and whatnot that both of them have double-digit points for certain games, that I feel like that even though they are splitting between sometimes, is that they have enough highs that I'd be tempted, and I might be shading because I did draft Jarry in that league, so maybe it might be a bias there, but I feel like there's enough good games in between them that I would be at least in a position to hold out and see what happens, because I feel like they don't want to give one of them all the starts. So I don't think it's going to be one of those situations where it's obvious unless someone does really bad. And I'm not sure that either of them are in either a system situation or honestly a skill situation, because Jarry was, seen as the heir apparent, or at least, after Fleury, and then Alex Nedeljkovic has had, the high pedigree in different spots. So it might be, and sadly, I hate to say this, one of those wait and see, because you never can really tell with goalies.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and it sort of, shows you where my question originated from. Because it's all, if Casey, for whatever reason, Casey DeSmith and Thatcher Demko started splitting starts, I think they both have enough value when they're playing that they're worth it. But, you don't want to get caught in a position. I guess you don't want to hold on too long if, one of them starts to really be taking over. But, definitely what we've seen is, every time one of them has a horrible start, the other is ready to provide a horrible start of their own. So we've never really seen one or the other kind of pull ahead there. And that's been kind of interesting to watch. But I think they're both a valuable start when they're starting, especially if you can get, an advantageous team to play against. All right. And then a couple other kind of headlines, pieces of information of note. We saw Elvis Merzlikins scratched again, a healthy scratch here. He last started a game 7 games ago. We have a quote from Pascal Vincent who said, "We want to put him," meaning Tarasov, "in a position so that we can evaluate, because we believe he's got the potential to be a number one, but we still don't know if he can sustain that kind of play." To me, that sounds like a team that, justifiably has kind of thrown in the towel on the season. They're not looking to be especially competitive, and they want to find out, what they have in their goalie room. So, it makes sense, I think, to give some of these guys a start, but at the same time, that's got to be tough for Merzlikins himself, and of course those people who grabbed him, wanting to see, if he could sustain anything positive for Columbus. Any thoughts on kind of the Columbus goalie situation? I know that's not a place that a lot of people are looking to sort of dip their toe in. But desperate times sometimes call for those desperate measures.
Sadly, I could say I have started a couple of Martin games for streaming, and sadly, they've worked out not as much as they've kind of turned into a backfire. So really, the main thing to kind of keep in line with this is that, as we're talking about with Pittsburgh, where they might not be getting all the starts, but it's a good team and they're getting good results, that this is kind of the way I look at it, is that it's going to be a situation where I want nobody for long term. So if you're holding on to Merzlikins in a 1-year league, this is at a point where 7 games have passed and he's not playing and he's healthy, so you can't even stash him on IR. So if at this point, even in maybe like the most desperate of goalie situations in your league, because I always hear random leagues talk about, there's never a goalie. This is a goalie to just drop and just find someone else that's even giving you a game, and then probably he'll just go through the waiver wire, and you might even be able to pick him up if he ever starts again.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say you're snoozing if Merzlikins is still on your roster, because he seems to barely be on the Jackets roster. One last item of note here. I wanted to ask, who is Lukas Cormier? I guess I'm asking this as a rhetorical question because I prepared the card. I'm not much of a prospects guy, but I reached out to the sources that I think are helpful in that regard. Of course, Victor of Fantasy Hockey Life podcast, who Elon and we did the split episode where we did the mid-season draft of players that were not fully owned in Cupful. At least 2 divisions had to not have them on the roster in order for it to be available. So Victor said, the reason we bring him up, if you are unfamiliar with the name Lukas Cormier, is he played power play 1 for Vegas in their last game and got a power play assist. Victor calls him a high pedigree guy who is super offensively gifted, but not the best defensively. He needs a strong partner to match up with. I believe he was partnered with Braden McNabb during that game, and they played first pairing minutes, or at least more minutes than any of the other defensive pairings. Elite Prospects describes him as an offensive defenseman with a quick shot that can beat a goalie or be tipped home, and Dabras Prospects sees him as a 50-ish point upside guy who is likely to stick in the league. At a time where defenders are on the move and their situations are changing, do you see Lukas Cormier as a potential add here? Obviously I think that upside is going to be limited once Shea Theodore returns, but I don't know what the outlook on that looks like exactly. So is this someone that you might be interested in putting on a roster, or is it more of a wait and see, or a who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole kind of situation in your mind?
So I think the nice thing is that he almost saw about 20 minutes altogether in his first game, which is a nice thing to see. But the thing on top of that, though, is within those 20 minutes rounded up, is that he had that assist, but he only had one shot and one block. So really what I feel like is that it really depends on the makeup of your league. So you're in a position where, you're only caring about points, you don't have the hits or the blocks or situations with that. Maybe that will be a person to pick up. Or if your league is a situation where maybe a Krug or those kind of guys where a power play specialist might get any value and you have a free move that you're not really holding on to, I might be willing to take a flyer. But for example, I'm looking right now at the stats in my division, and I can pick them up right now. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have interest personally, because I much more would rather have the defenseman that at least does a little bit other than get points, unless, you are your Quinn Hughes and you're going to get a pile of points. Because I hate just seeing that, say if you didn't get an assist, you would have a shot and a block, which would have been one whole cupful point, which would be basically nothing. So it really kind of depends on the makeup of your league.
Yeah, good. I think, so if you were, can we do a quick ranking? If you're picking from, Drysdale, Mintyukov, and Cormier, how would you rank those guys?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I'd probably just say you could maybe flip a coin between the Mintyukov and the Drysdale, because I feel like Drysdale is such a question mark. I don't know how much to put him, but the one thing I'll say is I'd probably put both of them decently higher than Cormier, with the understanding that Cormier is a lottery ticket and he could just explode. So I'm not sure, if you like your high risk, high reward kind of situations, Cormier is the best. But if you're looking for, the best average points from just all situations for the next 30 days, I think he would be the worst.
All right. Yeah, great. Appreciate the insights there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have some injury and outjury updates and some hot and cold players. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. Shams, we're going to run through some injuries and outjuries just quickly here. We don't have a lot of takes on these. It's just sort of more your news updates that you rely on us for. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in New Jersey, a highly injured team that is hoping they'll get some players to bounce back here. What's the outlook over in the Devils?
So it's tough to get any real strong information out of Lindy Ruff, but the good news is that we did get a Jack Hughes update, and he says that it's going to be weeks, not months. So I'm not going to go into the math there, but at the very least, it's not going to be like a rest of the season kind of thing. So good news, and then hopefully we'll get more information out of him in the future. But it doesn't seem to be an extra long-term injury.
Yeah, obviously, I think our Hughes owners will be happy to hear that. But tough when your likely first round talent is hanging out on that IR slot. Another outjury that's been kind of a long time coming. It sounds like Adin Hill will be returning. The initial report was Colorado or Boston this week, but now it sounds like Colorado is more likely because Logan Thompson is sick, so he seems like he won't be an option. So Adin Hill managers, looking like you want to think about who you can drop from your roster to get your guy back in goal. Or, if you're a little sanguine about his chances against Colorado, maybe you leave him on the bench for a game, but just know that at least on Yahoo, your ability to make moves is going to be limited if you got a healthy guy there on IR. Some good news, some rare good news, I suppose, for Chicago, besides the elevated play of, Jason Dickinson, who probably should be a third-line center, but is getting a zillion minutes a game. But they're getting some help on the blue line. Give us a quick update there.
Yeah, so the coach there is saying that Joe just needs a little bit more practice, but he's hopeful that he'd be back within the week. So that's going to be that situation of just, watching game day news and just kind of keeping an eye of when that announcement is, when he's finally back. So we give that situation of, which day it's going to be more than which week kind of thing.
Yeah, I think definitely helpful, probably for the power play. But yeah, I guess one of the things that's been kind of interesting is that we haven't really seen a huge drop off in scoring from Chicago yet, but it sort of almost feels like Wile E. Coyote's legs are still spinning in the air, but he hasn't started to fall yet. So maybe we're having some Wile E. Coyote effect here. We'll keep an eye on it. If Chicago can keep scoring, I'm ready to give them all the credit in the world, but I'm a little worried about that. One last injury update. It looks like Charlie Lindgren is on the cusp of returning. That probably means Darcy Kuemper owners should, he's going to be looking over his shoulder with Lindgren coming back. Lindgren hasn't been great the whole season, but he has certainly seemed to put some pressure on Darcy Kuemper at times. And has certainly had some games where he's really, given Washington some good chances to win. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. All right, let's jump into the hot and cold streaks. We're kind of leaning on the hot today. Part of it is because I want to indulge myself a little bit here. Unfortunately, this happened during a couple weeks where I was not very forward-facing about moves I was making in my roster because it was over the holidays and we were on break. But I am proud to say I am the back-to-back stream king of the Cupful. One of the things that we've been doing with, I shouldn't say we, it's really Kevin Hebert in the Discord is, keeping track and providing awards for, who got the most out of their defensemen for the week, who got the most out of their goalies and their forwards, who lost by the tightest margin. And one of the awards is the Stream King for the person who has had the best streaming for the week. And I have been a back-to-back Stream King. 2 weeks ago, it was Warren Fogle, Marcus Pettersson, Blake Coleman, and Jack Quinn. Coleman and Quinn have stuck around on my lineup in the aftermath there, so still benefiting from those picks. But that was very nice. Fogle leading the way with 25 points with that crazy 5-point outburst on New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, I had a very painful loss on the last goal of the week. Because it was shorthanded and shorthanded goals, this is Josh Manson, are worth an extra 2 points. I lost by 1.75. That was brutal. But last week, the streaming king factor played a good role because I was able to pull out a win. Martin Jones, obviously the big winner there. Andrew Mangiapane, Laurent Brossoit, who I think might be our streamer goalie of the season so far with the way that he's been playing. Those few times that Connor Hellebuck needs relief, he's just been crushing it. And Nico Dawes got me some points too. So I'm going to try and be more, like I said, forward facing about some of my picks. So if I can keep this rolling, hopefully it'll be useful. This week it was Teddy Bluger for the Monday and Tuesday games. I've gotten an assist out of each of them, so not bad. And we talked about, Jones last week. Some of these guys are folks who are going to stick around on the roster for a while. Like I said, some interesting picks in there, and hopefully, I can be of more use moving forward, to provide some guidance about some of the moves that I'm making, and hopefully they will continue to turn out effectively. And then you had a hot streak over in St. Louis you wanted to talk about, Shams.
Yeah. So we're talking about a lot of defensemen today. So I wanted to bring up another one, Scott Perunovich. He is I'd say he's kind of in between the prospect and the ready player, because I think he's been playing most of the season now. from returning from injury, he has played 6 games and he has 5 assists. He's played today. I'm not sure how he's been doing, but the nice thing is that even though he is on power play 2, 4 of those 5 assists came on even strength, so he has been scoring. Now, the thing is, though, is that it really kind of depends on what league you're looking at, because he has no more than 1 shot in any game, and then he only has like a couple blocks here or there. So this is kind of like, honestly, the way I'm thinking of it, we were talking about Cormier before, is that if this would be kind of like the best case scenario, as I kind of see of like, or best case realistic scenario, the 0.01% chance that he turns into Cale Makar or whatnot. But let's be realistic of like a person that plays a more offensive game, doesn't really do a lot of the grinding of like a Falk or what Parayko does, is that here's a guy that if you're in your points leagues or you're that person that just want all or nothing and is fine with, seeing a 0-point game from your defenseman, but ride those highs when they get that goal or assist, that Perunovich might be that person to kind of ride along with the understanding that when it starts to cool off, that you're fine to drop them.
Yeah, definitely. Even when they give you an outstanding performance, we were talking about Marcus Pettersson earlier. He had that 4 assist game in the same one where Letang had 6. But you can't expect that to continue every game, and you don't want to fall in love with somebody to the point where you're not willing to drop even after it's clear that it's time to move on. So yeah, I think that's some savvy advice, is don't get yourself into trouble by going overboard or falling too in love with some of these players. But yeah, Perunovich is definitely an interesting one for folks who are looking to grab a defenseman off the wire. Another one that you can look at, just a smorgasbord of defensemen. And then the last thing we want to talk about here is Juuse Saros. We mentioned him earlier, kind of a little nervous about what we're seeing from him. I know you were watching this pattern pretty closely, so you probably have a better sense of it than I do. What do you see here?
This is sadly one of those situations where can't really do much about it. The good thing is, at least, is that they are starting him basically every night. However, for the last 5 games, and I'm including the current game, is that he's allowed 5 goals in all of the games he's completed. So basically 5 against Carolina, 5 against Detroit, 5 against Calgary. And right now they're just finished the second period against Anaheim of all teams. He's already let 4 in on 21 shots. And his only golden game he has, it's a shutout, is against Chicago, which we were just mentioning was depleted so much. So this is one of those situations where I think we were kind of quick to anoint, and quick, it might be a bad word, but this is just kind of that scary thought of, people joke about all goalies are bad, is that we've said in the past where, he's a second half kind of player. And then he had that great year last year. And we're like, okay, well, he must hit the peak now. So this is just kind of that thing to keep in the back of your mind that, always be wary of just what goalies you're picking up in the draft, no matter how well it looks in the past. Hell, even Shesterkin and Sorokin have had their troubles of just that little thing of just, put the brake in and not be so quick to think of these goalies are just set to be great going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Shesterkin, we were talking about Ned and Jarry kind of going back and forth with great outings and horrible outings. Shesterkin is, his last 4 starts have been 2 quality starts and 2 really bad starts. 1 goal on 34 shots, or 35 shots, 1 goal on 22 shots, but alternating with 6 goals on 27 shots and 5 goals on 25 shots. So it's tough to evaluate sometime. And this is why you and I really tried to take your advice this year. I waited on those goalies for about as long as I could. Jarry was my number 1. And then I think Husso was my number 2, but we've seen these guys kind of jump up and play well that you could grab on the wire. Talbot was on a lot of wires. Martin Jones, another guy. So there's those opportunities are available if you're willing to be patient and you can play that waiver wire game. And you're not caught in goalies are some of the few who can give you, they're the only ones who can give you negative fantasy points. Well, depending on your setup. Do you want to take a risk on a guy who could potentially put you in the hole, which is a step beyond just sort of not performing like a Jonathan Huberdeau or an Alex Ovechkin, potentially. Not that people were drafting Huberdeau super high this year. All right, bud. That takes us to the end of our episode. We are ready to wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Be sure to give us a follow at Short Shifts KK. I will try to put some of my streaming ideas out there once I make them. Brian and Elon, of course, can be found at Keeping Carlson. GameDayTweets.com will give you all the best information from Twitter in one convenient place, including searchable by team, by position, by name. And visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, Elite Prospects for today's episode. Obviously, Dobber Prospects helped out. I got Victor to give an assist there. So really digging into the bench of all our available information providers, and we really appreciate all of them. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.